Introduction. Let's be honest. You've probably been sold the same story about success over and over again. Wake up at 5 a.m., grind harder than everyone else, post the wins online, and hope the world applauds. You're told that if you hustle long enough, sacrifice more than most, and fake it till you make it, you'll eventually unlock that golden gate called success. But here's the truth no one talks about. That version of success? It's a performance. A polished illusion that leaves too many people burnt out, disconnected, and still feeling like they're not enough. You see the highlight reels. You hear the motivational speeches. But what you don't see are the invisible rules, the quiet sacrifices, the mental rewiring, the spiritual depth, the emotional battles. The secrets, the real ones, aren't posted on social media or shouted from stages. They're whispered in private circles, passed on in mentorships, or stumbled upon in moments of rock-bottom clarity. This book is about those secrets, the ones they don't teach you in school or post in a viral thread, the ones that don't fit neatly into a quick tip or a trendy framework, the ones that make you uncomfortable before they set you free. Because real success isn't about hustling your soul into the ground or chasing applause. It's about alignment, clarity, and power that begins on the inside. It's about playing a different game entirely, one that most people don't even realize exists. You've probably felt it already. That quiet pull that tells you the life you were told to chase isn't quite right for you. That you were meant for more, but not just more money or titles or recognition. More meaning, more peace, more truth. That's the voice this book honors. That whisper from within that's been asking you to break out of the noise and start living your version of success, unfiltered and unapologetic. The success code isn't a one-size-fits-all blueprint. It's a deconstruction, a decoding, a return to the source of who you really are and why you're here. It's about uncovering the subconscious stories holding you back, unlocking the mindset that fuels sustained greatness, and revealing the invisible strategies used by those who build real, lasting success. Along the way, you'll be challenged to question what you've accepted as truth. You'll be invited to trade burnout for clarity, validation for vision, and self-doubt for self-trust. You'll realize that the version of success you've been chasing may have been too small for the person you're becoming. So if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still not getting the results you crave, if you've built an impressive life, but still feel strangely unfulfilled, if you've seen people with half your talent rise faster and wondered what they know that you don't, you're in the right place. This isn't about working harder. It's about working from the right place within. The most powerful people in the world don't just do more. They are more. And that difference, that inner shift, is the real code. Let's crack it together. Chapter 1. Success isn't what you think it is. We need to start with some truth-telling. Because if you're like most people, you spent a good part of your life chasing a version of success that was never really yours to begin with. Maybe it started in childhood, when you were praised for good grades, neat behavior, and gold stars. Maybe it deepened in school, where you learned that winners were the loudest, the fastest, the most admired. Or maybe it crept in later, through social media, through pressure, through quiet comparisons, until you started measuring your worth by external standards you didn't even choose. Success, as it's often portrayed, is shiny. It's the house, the car, the salary, the vacation posts, the perfect body, the six-figure launch, the blue check. And while none of those things are bad, they are not the full picture. They're not even the real goal for most people. They're symptoms of something deeper, desire for freedom, for impact, for meaning, for peace. But because we're conditioned to chase the visible rewards, we often miss the deeper needs hiding beneath them. The problem is that most people never slow down long enough to question what success actually means to them. They spend years running toward a destination that was built by someone else's expectations. Parents, culture, school, influencers, society. And then they get there and feel empty, or numb, or restless. And they don't know why. So let me ask you this. When you strip away the noise, what does success feel like to you? Because real success isn't just about what you have. It's about how you live, how you feel, who you become. It's not a performance. It's not a title. It's not something you prove. It's something you embody. That's the shift this chapter invites you to make. When you redefine success on your own terms, everything changes. You stop hustling to meet imaginary standards, and you start creating a life that matches your inner values. You stop comparing your timeline to someone else's highlight reel. You stop chasing applause and start following alignment. You begin to see that success might look quieter than you expected. Maybe it's having time to pick your kids up from school without rushing. Maybe it's sleeping deeply at night because your work doesn't drain your soul. Maybe it's building something slowly, sustainably, with integrity. Maybe it's having the courage to leave what looks successful on the outside so you can feel free on the inside. And this is where the real work begins. Because once you realize you've been climbing the wrong mountain, you have a choice to make. Keep going or climb down and choose differently. It takes guts to walk away from the path that others applaud, especially when you've already invested time and energy into it. But success isn't about staying loyal to the old version of you. It's about honoring the truth of who you are now and who you're becoming. You'll also start to notice something else. When you operate from internal alignment, the outer success often follows. Maybe not instantly, and maybe not in the way you expected. But when your values, vision, and actions are in sync, you create momentum that's sustainable, magnetic, energizing. You don't have to force or fake your way through life. You move with clarity and purpose, and people feel that. It's important to acknowledge that redefining success doesn't mean settling or shrinking. This isn't about playing small. It's about playing smart. It's about choosing a life that honors your truth, not someone else's template. It's about remembering that success is a state of being before it's ever a list of achievements. And here's the beautiful part. When you let go of the old story, you create space for a new one. One that's rooted in joy, peace, purpose, and flow. One where you're no longer chasing an image, but living in alignment with your essence. That's when the game changes. So if the version of success you've been pursuing has left you anxious, depleted, or disconnected, it's not because you're broken. It's because you're waking up. You're beginning to question the script. You're starting to listen to your soul, not just your schedule. And that's the first real secret of the success code. It's not about chasing more. It's about coming home to what truly matters. Not later, not someday, but now. Because you get to define what success means. And once you do, the entire game shifts in your favor. You might find yourself asking, if I stopped chasing what I thought success was, who am I now? What am I even working toward? Those are scary questions, but they're also the doorway to your freedom. See, the old model of success thrives on fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of not being enough. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of missing out. And fear, while effective in the short term, is an exhausting fuel source. It burns hot and fast. It makes you run, but it rarely makes you fulfilled. What replaces fear in the new version of success is clarity. Not just on your goals, but on your identity, on your values, on the kind of life that makes you feel awake instead of depleted. That kind of clarity can't be faked. It's built through intentional reflection, honest conversations with yourself, and the courage to admit when something isn't working, even when it looks good on paper. One of the most dangerous lies we're fed is that success is a destination. That once you arrive at the salary, the title, the lifestyle, you'll finally feel safe, worthy, seen. But you've probably noticed that the more you chase that external version, the more it moves the finish line. There's always another benchmark, another mountain, another person doing it better. It's exhausting and unsustainable. The truth is, success that requires you to abandon yourself is never truly success. If you have to silence your voice, numb your body, or perform a version of yourself just to keep going, you're not winning. You're just surviving in disguise. So what if you chose a different approach? What if you let go of success as a ladder to climb and started seeing it as a rhythm to align with? What if you began measuring your success by how often you feel at peace, how connected you are to your purpose, how present you are in your relationships, how free you feel in your own skin? That version of success doesn't burn you out. It builds you up. It doesn't compete. It collaborates. It doesn't seek attention. It radiates authenticity. This shift is radical because it requires you to trust something deeper than achievement. It asks you to lean into being before doing. And in a world addicted to performance, presence is the most rebellious and powerful thing you can embody. You're not here to be impressive. You're here to be real. And when you're real, success becomes a byproduct, not the pursuit. So as we close this chapter, I want to leave you with this truth. Success is not found in the noise. It's not in the hustle, or the chase, or the constant striving to be more. It's in the moments when you feel most connected to yourself, most alive in your work, most grounded in your body, most aligned in your choices. That's where success lives. Quietly, steadily, authentically. You don't need permission to rewrite the rules. You don't need to wait for anyone to validate your new path. You just need to choose it fully. Chapter 2. The mind rewiring nobody talks about. Let's get one thing straight. Success isn't just about what you do. It's about how you think. But not just the thoughts you notice. It's the quiet, hidden beliefs that run in the background. The internal scripts you don't even realize you're repeating. These are the real architects of your life. And if you're not aware of them, they'll keep you stuck in loops that feel impossible to break. Most people don't realize how much of their behavior is actually driven by unconscious programming. You might call it your mindset, your habits, your personality. But deep underneath all of that are the beliefs you absorbed growing up. Messages like, you have to work hard to deserve rest, or don't ask for too much, or if you fail, it means you're not good enough. These aren't just thoughts. They're neural pathways carved into your brain over time. They influence how you show up, what you expect from life, and what you believe you're worthy of. This is where it gets real, because even when you're motivated, even when you're showing up and doing all the right things, you can still feel stuck if your internal wiring doesn't support expansion. You might self-sabotage. You might procrastinate. You might succeed, but constantly feel like an imposter. And it's not because you're lazy or undisciplined. It's because your inner operating system hasn't been updated. Think of your mind like soil. Whatever you plant will grow. But if the soil is filled with old weeds, the new seeds won't thrive. That's why real success isn't just about planting new goals. It's about pulling up the roots of old patterns. It's about choosing to consciously upgrade the thoughts, beliefs, and identities that no longer match the future you're building. The tricky part? Most of this programming wasn't even your choice. It came from authority figures, environments, trauma, survival instincts. It served you at one point, but now, it's probably keeping you small. And here's the truth most people don't tell you. You can't outwork a mindset that doesn't believe in your own potential. No matter how many hours you grind, if your internal belief system is coated with fear or lack, you'll hit the same invisible ceiling every time. So what does rewiring actually look like? It starts with awareness. Catching the voice in your head that says, I can't, and asking, whose voice is that? It means noticing your reactions, your patterns, your default responses, and choosing a new response, even if it feels unnatural at first. It means getting curious about the beliefs you inherited and deciding which ones you actually want to keep. It's not glamorous work. You won't get a standing ovation for healing your inner child or breaking generational patterns. But this is the deep, quiet work that changes everything. Because once your internal reality shifts, your external reality follows. Not by accident, but by alignment. You start noticing different opportunities. You start attracting different people. You start making decisions from a place of power instead of fear. You stop leaking energy into overthinking and start moving with clarity and calm. The mental clutter that used to drown you starts to dissolve. And you know what else happens? You begin to trust yourself. Not in an arrogant, I have it all figured out way, but in a grounded, I've got my back now way. That self-trust becomes your foundation. It gives you the courage to take risks, to fail forward, to say no when something doesn't feel aligned, even when it looks good on paper. Rewiring your mind is not about becoming a different person. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about shedding what was never yours and remembering your original blueprint, your intuition, your creativity, your clarity, your worth. And no, it's not a one-time thing. This is a practice, a lifestyle, a commitment. Because even when you've done the inner work, life will still test you. Old patterns will try to sneak back in. Doubt will whisper. Fear will knock. But the difference is, you won't be ruled by them anymore. You'll recognize them for what they are, residue, echoes, and you'll respond from a new place. This is the mind work they don't teach in schools. The inner game that the world's most successful people know is everything. It's not flashy. It's not fast, but it's the real flex. The quiet revolution that changes how you lead, how you love, how you show up. Because when your mind is clear, your actions become powerful. When your beliefs are aligned, your success becomes inevitable. And when your thoughts are your allies, not your enemies, you stop chasing results. You embody them. Here's where it starts getting even more powerful. Because once you realize your thoughts aren't absolute truths, you gain access to a level of freedom most people never experience. The mind isn't some fixed structure you're stuck with. It's adaptable, moldable, neuroplastic, which means you're not just capable of change, you were wired for it. But most people don't slow down long enough to notice the thoughts driving their life. They're too busy reacting to the surface symptoms, stress, anxiety, burnout, lack of motivation, without digging into the beliefs beneath those symptoms. And the mind will keep running the same outdated scripts until you choose to pause, observe, and question. Here's the wild part. The brain is designed to protect you, not to evolve you, which means it prioritizes safety over growth. It wants what's familiar, not necessarily what's good for you. That's why we keep repeating the same patterns, even when they hurt us. The job that drains us, the relationship that limits us, the habits that sabotage us. Familiar equals safe to the subconscious, and safe equals survival. So when you try to change, your brain often sees that as a threat, even if that change is positive, even if it's what you've been craving. That's why growth feels so uncomfortable. That resistance isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're stretching your neural pathways beyond the old programming. It's the friction of evolution. And this is where most people give up. Not because they're weak, but because they don't know what's actually happening. They think, if this were meant for me, it wouldn't be this hard. But here's the truth. Growth is uncomfortable. Transformation is disruptive. You're literally changing your mind. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're replacing years, sometimes decades, of conditioning. That's sacred work. And it's anything but easy. But once you push through that discomfort, something incredible happens. Your nervous system begins to recalibrate. Your tolerance for peace increases. Your inner dialogue softens. You stop needing to over-explain or over-apologize. You stop operating from fear and start moving with intention. You begin to embody your worth, not just talk about it. And that internal shift, it changes everything. People around you notice it. They may not have the words for it, but they feel the difference. You're no longer seeking permission. You're not living from reaction. You've shifted from chaos to clarity. And because you've done the inner rewiring, you're no longer available for the patterns that used to hold you hostage. And it's not just mindset, it's identity. Because once you start thinking differently, you start seeing yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who's trying to succeed and start living as someone who already belongs in the room. You walk differently, speak differently, choose differently, and opportunities begin to align with the new energy you're putting out. This is why affirmations alone don't work. You can't plaster positive words over a foundation built on fear. You have to do the excavation. You have to get into the roots. And yes, it's messy, but it's also liberating. Because the more you clean out the old programming, the more space you make for who you really are. This is why success isn't about learning more strategies or downloading another productivity app. It's about transforming your inner world so completely that your outer world has no choice but to catch up. You become magnetic not because you're chasing, but because you're clear, because you're aligned, because you're no longer in conflict with yourself. That's the shift they don't talk about enough. That's the rewiring that separates those who succeed with ease from those who burn out trying. Chapter 3. The Hidden Power of Strategic Relationships. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood elements of success, relationships. And not just your romantic ones, or the friend you keep around for laughs and memories. I mean the strategic relationships, the intentional ones, the ones that shape your mindset, your momentum, your opportunities, and ultimately, your future. Here's the truth most people don't realize. Success is never a solo game. No matter how self-made someone seems, behind every powerful move is a network, sometimes silent, sometimes visible, that has either supported them, opened doors, challenged them, or elevated their thinking. The question isn't if relationships affect your success. The question is which ones are doing what. Most people surround themselves with who's familiar, not who's formational. They choose comfort over challenge, familiarity over alignment. And that's human. We crave safety. We're wired for connection. But the problem is, staying loyal to the wrong environments can quietly stunt your growth, and you won't even realize it until your spirit starts shrinking. Not all relationships are bad, but not all relationships are aligned for who you're becoming. And the more you evolve, the more you'll notice that certain people feel heavier to carry. It's not because you don't love them. It's because your frequency is shifting. You're starting to prioritize truth over tolerance, vision over nostalgia, and that's uncomfortable, especially when your inner transformation threatens the dynamic you once shared. Now, let's be honest. The word strategic can sound cold. It might make you think of manipulation or networking for personal gain. But in this context, it's not about using people. It's about aligning with people. Strategic relationships are built on shared values, mutual growth, and unspoken energy that moves both people forward. They challenge you to level up, not by force, but by presence. Being around them sharpens your thinking, expands your vision, makes you want to honor the best version of yourself. These aren't always the loudest people in the room. They're not always the ones with flashy titles or thousands of followers. Sometimes they're quiet forces, mentors, collaborators, truth tellers, even strangers who ask the right question at the right time. And the impact they have on your path, unmeasurable. One of the hidden keys to success is knowing how to recognize those people when they show up. And more importantly, knowing how to be one of those people for others. That's where the power multiplies. When you're intentional about the energy you give and the circles you keep, you create an ecosystem of growth. You attract those operating at a similar frequency, and suddenly, momentum becomes natural. But here's the part most people skip. To build those kinds of relationships, you have to clear space. That means being brutally honest about the connections that no longer serve you. The ones built on guilt, or obligation, or trauma bonding. The ones where you have to shrink, censor, or overgive just to keep the peace. Letting go doesn't mean you're better than anyone. It means you're choosing alignment over attachment. And yes, it's painful, especially when history is involved. But what's on the other side of that grief is freedom. You create emotional bandwidth, mental clarity. You begin to hear your own voice again without the noise of people who never really saw you. You start to recognize how much of your energy was being drained by holding space for relationships that were never holding space for you. From that place, you can start building something deeper. You can begin asking, who makes me feel expansive? Who challenges me without controlling me? Who sees the real me and calls it forward? These are the people you want in your inner circle. These are the people who help you grow in a way that's healthy, steady, and soul-led. Success without the right people around you feels hollow. You can reach the peak, but if you have to pretend, perform, or protect yourself the whole way up, it's not freedom. It's survival. But when you build with the right people, everything changes. Your wins are celebrated, not resented. Your losses are held, not judged. Your vision is supported, not diluted. And that kind of support, it's a game changer. You don't need 1,000 people. You need the right ones. A handful of truth tellers. A few soul expanders. People who remind you of who you are when the world tries to make you forget. People who mirror your strength when you're too tired to see it for yourself. This chapter isn't about becoming popular. It's about becoming powerfully connected. Because when your relationships are rooted in truth and alignment, they don't just support your success. They amplify it. The future you want is already connected to people who are also creating it. Your job is to rise into the version of you that recognizes them. And more importantly, to become that person first. That's when your circle starts to shift. That's when your environment starts to reflect your evolution. And that's when the hidden power of relationships becomes undeniable. Your relationships are either reinforcing your growth or reinforcing your stagnation. There's rarely a neutral zone. And that doesn't mean people are good or bad. It just means every connection is either watering your roots or draining your soil. And you, as someone on the path of self-awareness and higher vision, you feel it more deeply than most. You can walk into a room and sense tension before a word is spoken. You can hear what people aren't saying just as clearly as what they are. You're wired to intuit energy, not just information. That's why unaligned relationships don't just exhaust you. They disorient you. They pull you out of your center and cloud your inner compass. That's also why aligned relationships feel so rare, so precious. They don't just make you feel seen, they help you see yourself again. But to cultivate those kinds of connections, you need to be willing to stand in your truth, even when it makes you less likable, even when it disrupts the comfort of your current circle. Because not everyone is meant to grow with you. Some people were only designed to know a version of you that no longer exists. And that's okay. You're allowed to outgrow relationships. You're allowed to outgrow dynamics where you're always the fixer, the forgiver, the quiet one, the motivator, the emotional crutch. When you start choosing truth over harmony, your relationships will get louder before they get clearer. Some people will resist the new boundaries. Others will ghost you without a word. And some, bless them, will rise with you. They'll meet you in the expansion. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll mirror back the same level of self-awareness you're striving for. Those are your people. Protect them. Nurture those relationships like sacred ground. Because when you're walking a path most people don't understand, one of conscious growth, inner peace, and purpose, you need people around you who get it. Not just people who tolerate your journey, but who respect it, who inspire it, who walk beside you, not just when you're shining, but also when you're shedding old layers and figuring it out. And here's where something beautiful happens. When you're aligned with the right people, growth becomes exponential. Conversations become deeper. Ideas become bolder. Support becomes intuitive. You move in sync with people who don't just share your vibe. They share your vision. That's when collaboration becomes effortless. That's when building together becomes natural. But none of that happens by accident. It requires intention. It requires discernment. It requires you to be radically honest about how your relationships feel, not just how they look. Are you constantly walking on eggshells, dimming your truth, ignoring your instincts just to keep the peace? That's not connection. That's survival. Real connection is built in spaces where your nervous system feels safe, where your presence is enough, where you don't have to earn love with labor. That's the kind of connection that fuels your next level. And you deserve that. Not because you've hustled hard enough or healed enough, but because it's your birthright to be surrounded by people who see, hear, and honor your full self. So as you move forward in your journey, ask yourself, who do I feel most alive around? Who reminds me of my strength? Who challenges me to grow without making me feel small? Those are your expanders. And the more you align with them, the more your success becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Because when the energy around you is clean, when your relationships are rooted in truth, and when your circle matches your calling, success stops feeling like a battle. Chapter 4. Why most people fail, and how to escape the trap. Let's talk about the hard stuff, the side of success no one posts about. The silent struggles that play out behind closed doors. When the lights are off, the motivation is gone, and the only thing louder than your to-do list is your self-doubt. Because if we're being honest, failure rarely shows up as one big collapse. It's more subtle than that. It's quiet. It creeps in through procrastination, fear, burnout, and all the little ways we convince ourselves that now isn't the right time. The truth? Most people don't fail because they aren't talented. They don't fail because they don't want it bad enough. They fail because they haven't learned how to manage their inner resistance. That's the real enemy. Resistance will dress up as logic. It will whisper, "You're not ready," or "Maybe you should wait until you have more clarity," or "What if people don't take you seriously?" It sounds reasonable, even protective, but all it's doing is keeping you in the same loop, waiting, planning, overthinking, and never quite starting. We live in a world that worships busyness. That tells us success is found in hustle, grind, and always doing more. But sometimes, the most dangerous trap isn't doing too little. It's doing too much of the wrong things. The tasks that keep us feeling productive, but never actually move us forward. It's spending hours organizing your desk, tweaking your website, or planning your goals. For the 5th time this year. It feels like progress, but it's just polished avoidance. Most people don't even realize they're in that loop. They've been taught that failure is the end of the story, when in reality, failure is often just feedback. It's your life saying, "This way doesn't work. Try another." But when your identity is wrapped in perfectionism, any setback feels like a personal attack. You start to believe that stumbling means you're not cut out for this, that you're falling behind, that you missed your chance. But what if failure wasn't a verdict, but a mirror? What if the resistance you feel is actually a compass pointing toward the beliefs that need to be healed? Because here's the thing, your external world is often just a reflection of your internal permission. If you don't believe you're worthy of success, you'll unconsciously sabotage your path to it. If you still carry guilt about being seen, you'll dim your voice without even realizing it. If you've been taught that success must come through struggle, you'll repel ease and overcomplicate everything. And this is where most people stay stuck. They keep chasing results on the outside without doing the excavation on the inside. They focus on tactics instead of transformation. But the truth is, no strategy in the world will work if your identity doesn't align with your vision. This is why doing the work is so much more than routines and vision boards. It's looking at your patterns. It's asking hard questions like, why do I keep choosing what's familiar over what's freeing? Or, what am I afraid will happen if I actually succeed? Most people never slow down long enough to answer those questions. And without those answers, they keep building on shaky ground. Fear is sneaky. It doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes it shows up as perfectionism, as people-pleasing, as over-planning, as comparing your path to someone else's. Fear knows how to wear many masks, and it's your job to recognize them, to look at fear in the eye and say, I see you, but I'm not choosing you. Now here's the good news. Once you become aware of the traps, you can start stepping around them. You can stop judging yourself for being stuck and start getting curious instead. You can begin to reframe your resistance as a teacher. You can meet your fear with compassion, not shame. And in that softness, in that self-awareness, something powerful happens. You begin to move differently, not with panic, not with pressure, but with clarity, with courage, with a deep knowing that you are never behind. You are just becoming. So if you've tried and failed before, good. It means you were brave enough to try. If you've started and stopped, beautiful. It means something inside you still believes in possibility. What matters now isn't your track record. It's your willingness to start again, this time from a deeper place. Because success isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about learning to keep going with more wisdom, more grace, and more alignment each time. It's about choosing to believe in your own evolution, even when the world hasn't caught up to it yet. The people who create real success aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who stop making falling mean something about their worth. They don't take failure personally. They take it as data. They adjust. They pivot. They rise. Not because it's easy, but because they've decided they're no longer available for a life built on avoidance. That's what separates those who stay stuck from those who soar. Not luck, not talent, not timing, but the decision to keep showing up, especially when it's hard. Especially when no one's clapping yet. So if you're in a season where it feels like everything's uncertain, where your momentum is shaky and your confidence is fragile, take heart. You're not failing. You're forging. You're building the resilience, the clarity, and the inner strength that the next version of your success will stand on. Let's get even more honest, because the space between where you are and where you want to be, that's where the real transformation happens. But most people try to skip this part. They want the destination without the discomfort. They want the rewards without the rewiring. They want the celebration without the silence, the recognition without the rebuilding. But the truth is, this in-between space, the fog, the doubt, the grind, the solitude, that's where your foundation is tested and your voice gets clear. This is where you learn how to regulate your emotions without external validation, where you keep creating even when nobody's watching, where you keep trusting the vision even when the results don't show up right away. This is the part of the journey most people abandon, not because they don't care, but because they've been conditioned to believe that discomfort means wrong direction, when in reality, discomfort is often confirmation that you're moving into new territory. And in that new territory, your old tools won't work. The same mindset that got you to this level won't carry you to the next. You'll have to let go of identities that felt safe but small. You'll have to release habits that soothed you but stalled you. You'll have to outgrow conversations, routines, and relationships that fed your former self but suffocate your future. That process can feel like loss, and in many ways, it is. You'll grieve the version of you that tolerated too much, that made herself small to make others comfortable, that kept peace at the expense of her power. But on the other side of that grief is freedom, clarity, authority, alignment. Most people never get to experience that side because they tap out too early. They misread the silence as failure. They misinterpret slow growth as a lack of potential. But real success, sustainable success, the kind that doesn't burn you out or hollow you out, takes depth. And depth takes time. This is where consistency becomes your secret weapon. Not the kind that runs on shame or hustle, but the kind that flows from clarity and intention. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fast. You just need to keep showing up. Keep saying yes to your future self, even when your current results don't match your effort yet. Because results don't always show up where you plant the seed. Sometimes they sprout in places you didn't expect. Opportunities, connections, insights that come as byproducts of you simply deciding to keep going, to keep learning, to keep believing in a reality that doesn't fully exist yet, but could if you keep holding the vision long enough to build it. You'll know you're on the right path not because it's always easy, but because you feel yourself expanding. You'll notice you're not as easily shaken. You bounce back faster. You speak with more conviction. You stop asking for permission. You make decisions that honor your peace over people pleasing. That's growth. And that's success, even before the metrics reflect it. Let me say this plainly. You're not behind. You're in process. And that process is sacred. It's carving you into the person who can hold what you've been asking for. Because what's the point of reaching your goals if your nervous system can't handle the attention, the impact, the responsibility? What's the point of chasing success if you can't feel safe when you finally get it? The work you're doing in this chapter, the inner work, the unglamorous work, is laying the groundwork for sustainable expansion. And yes, it's quiet. Yes, it's slow. But it's real. And real always outlasts fake. So if you're in that space where the dream feels far and the doubts feel close, let this be your reminder. Nothing is wasted. Every step, every setback, every silent win is part of the code. You're not failing. You're forging something deeper than a goal. You're building a self-led life, a rooted legacy, a success story that didn't require you to lose yourself just to win. Chapter 5, The Energy Equation, Unlocking the Flow State of Success. Let's wrap this with something most people completely overlook when talking about success. Energy. Not just the woo-woo, spiritual energy, though that has its place. I'm talking about your real, lived, day-to-day energy. The fuel that powers your ideas, your discipline, your creativity, and your ability to show up for your dreams consistently and with conviction. Here's what no one tells you. Strategy means nothing if your energy is off. You can have the best business plan, the most detailed calendar, the most aesthetic vision board, but if your energy is scattered, burned out, resentful, anxious, or misaligned, you'll struggle to follow through. You'll start strong and fizzle out. You'll feel like you're swimming upstream, always pushing, rarely flowing. And success will feel like survival. Let's be real. The reason most people struggle with staying consistent isn't because they're lazy. It's because their energy is tied up in too many places that don't feed them, leaking energy into relationships that drain them, tasks that aren't theirs, goals that don't even belong to them, thoughts that sabotage them, guilt that keeps them small, and then they wonder why they feel stuck. When your energy is not protected, your mind becomes foggy, your body becomes tired, your spirit becomes numb, and suddenly, showing up for what you want feels impossible, no matter how passionate you are. You begin to associate success with burnout and visibility with vulnerability. But that's not success. That's just exhaustion in a costume. So what's the solution? Reclaim your energy. Audit your life like your future depends on it, because it does. Pay attention to what expands you and what shrinks you, what lights you up and what leaves you depleted. You can't build a sustainable life on borrowed energy. You have to create systems, rituals, and boundaries that protect your peace like a fortress. You have to stop giving yourself away to things that don't return you to yourself. This isn't about cutting people off or quitting your job tomorrow. It's about remembering that your energy is a limited, sacred resource, and not everything or everyone deserves access to it. When you treat your energy like gold, your life begins to reorganize itself around what truly matters. You stop chasing productivity and start following alignment. You realize that when your energy is clear, everything else flows easier. Your ideas, your communication, your execution, your intuition. Ever notice how the best ideas come when you're rested? or how inspiration shows up when you're finally relaxed. That's not a coincidence. That's your energy telling you that pressure kills creativity. That stillness opens the door to clarity. That joy is not a luxury. It's a frequency that calls in your best work. We've been conditioned to hustle, grind, and earn rest. But what if your biggest breakthroughs are on the other side of slowing down? What if your clarity doesn't come from doing more, but from doing less of what misaligns you? What if you gave yourself permission to work with your natural rhythm instead of against it? Success isn't about being busy. It's about being energized. It's about creating from a place of overflow, not obligation. It's about knowing when to push and when to pause, when to act and when to listen, when to stretch and when to soften. You don't need to force your way to the top. You need to flow your way into alignment. And the way to do that is to become ruthlessly protective of your energy, not out of fear, but out of devotion to your purpose. This is the secret the high performers, the visionaries, the deeply fulfilled creatives all know. The better you manage your energy, the more naturally you rise. Because energy is everything. It affects your mindset, your decision-making, your relationships, your resilience. And once you start aligning your energy with your intentions, success stops feeling like a grind and starts feeling like grace. You begin to attract instead of chase. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to create instead of copy. You begin to walk into rooms without needing to prove anything, because your presence carries clarity, calm, and conviction. This chapter isn't just about avoiding burnout. It's about unlocking the next level of your power. Because when you're energized, you're magnetic. You're grounded. You're clear. You're unshakable. Here's the part we rarely talk about. Energy is communication. It speaks before you open your mouth. It enters the room before your body. It's in your posture, your tone, your decision-making, even in the way you breathe. You could be saying all the right things, showing up in all the right places, but if your energy is tight, tired, or tangled, people will feel it before they understand it. Because energy doesn't lie. That's why some people walk in and instantly shift the atmosphere. Not because they're loud, but because they're clear. And clarity, let me tell you, is magnetic. When you've done the work to clean up your energy, when you've healed what needed healing, released what needed releasing, and honored what needed space, you begin to carry a different weight. Not the heavy kind, but the anchored kind. You're no longer blown around by every storm. You don't crumble under criticism or float away with flattery. You're centered. You're steady. You know who you are. Most people never get to this level because they're too busy reacting to life instead of regulating their inner world. But once you realize you can shift your energy moment to moment, you become powerful in a quiet way. You stop being a victim of your schedule, your emotions, or your surroundings. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer. You set the tone instead of absorbing whatever is thrown at you. That's the shift from hustle to harmony. It's not about doing less. It's about doing what matters from a place of alignment. You'll still work. You'll still stretch. You'll still strive for excellence. But you'll do it with an inner calm that can't be faked. You'll no longer chase validation because your worth won't be hanging on external wins. You'll already know who you are, and your energy will confirm it before your resume does. There's a reason the world is drawn to certain people, even if they don't say much. It's not always their talent or beauty or success. It's their energy. There's something clean about them. Grounded. Alive. Safe. They're not competing. They're not over-explaining. They're just being. Fully. Authentically. Unapologetically. That's not something you can fake. That's a byproduct of inner work. Of boundaries. Of rest. Of healing. Of alignment. If you really want to unlock your next level, start there. Start by cleaning your inner space. Unplug from what drains you. Unfollow what distorts you. Unlearn the belief that you have to sacrifice your sanity to be successful. Start honoring your rhythm. Pay attention to your full body yes, and your tight chest no. Start listening to the quiet cues your energy gives you, because it's always speaking. Your peace, that's part of the success code. Your rest, that's a power move. Your joy, that's not an indulgence. It's fuel. And the more you make choices that preserve your energy instead of just spending it, the more you begin to attract success on your terms. Not the kind that burns you out. Not the kind that feels empty after the applause. But the kind that feels like you. Every step of the way. So if you've ever wondered why you start strong and fizzle out, If you've ever questioned why you're exhausted even when you're doing everything right, if you've ever felt like success is possible but somehow still out of reach, start with your energy. Start with your presence. Start with the signals your body has been giving you all along. Because when you unlock this final piece of the success code, the energetic one, you stop surviving your goals and start embodying them. That's when everything shifts. That's when life meets you with more ease, more clarity, more alignment. Not because you finally earned it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. You don't need to do more to be worthy. You need to protect your energy like it's the gateway to everything you desire. Because it is. And now,